What's behind this dirty bomb that is coming out? Because before that we had this nuclear tactical nuclear weapons and was spinning around, and here comes dirty bomb. Shoigu calls Lloyd Austin, calls Wallace, calls all the Minister of Defenses of NATO. He wanted to warn them. What's behind this, Scott?
Well, what was behind the tactical nuclear weapon? Zelensky. Zelensky got panicked. Zelensky gave a speech, and he demanded that NATO launch a preemptive strike against Russia so that Russia wouldn't use a tactical nuclear weapon against Kiev. Russia doesn't want to use a tactical nuclear weapon against Kiev. Russia doesn't have a doctrine that allows this. Russia's never threatened to use a tactical nuclear weapon against Ukraine. But Zelensky was panicked by the partial mobilization and, of course, the annexation or absorption of these four former Ukrainian territories. So he created this false notion that Russia was getting ready to nuke Ukraine. So everybody was talking and running about that and all that. And Russia just stayed the course. And soon it became obvious that Russia wasn't, first of all, Russia wasn't losing. I mean, one of the premises of Russia using a nuclear weapon is that Russia's losing. And Zelensky tried to say, oh, this mobilization is proof that Russia's losing. The annexation of these territories is proof that Russia's losing. I think it's actually proof that Russia's getting ready to win. And that's what's happening now, because the Ukrainians are looking at the situation and realizing that Russia has consolidated its defenses. It's reinforcing. Meanwhile, Ukraine is burning up their reserves. They got nothing left. And the West is telling them, we don't have the money. We don't have the weapons. We can't do this for much longer. And Zelensky realizes, man, if I don't change something, I don't come up with a radical change, we're in trouble. So they cocked up this story about, Russia's going to, use a nuclear weapon or do a false flag in Nikolaev. They're blaming Russia, but it's Ukraine that's doing this. Now, what's the evidence? I don't know. What I do know is this. Sergei Lavrov, who's a very serious man, has come out and reemphasized that the basis of this concern is real, very real. So it's not some propaganda ploy by Russia. And Shoigu does not get on the phone with his Western counterparts just to play stupid political games. Shoigu talks to Austin, Wallace, and the others when there's really important business. It's a serious phone call. This is the same phone line they use for deconfliction in Syria and elsewhere. So for him to pick up the phone and call meant that he reviewed the intelligence and he felt that this was a situation that required high-level intervention. And so he did that. And I think it's important that he did that because even though the West right now is playing the propaganda game saying, well, we don't believe the Russian allegation, I can guarantee you the phone calls are being made to Zelensky saying, if you're doing something, don't do it. You'll lose all of our support. It'll be the end of you. We're not going to buy into it. It's not going to, the outcome will not be what you think it's going to be. If you think you can blow it up, blame it on Russia, and we're going to intervene, that isn't going to happen. What will happen is if you blow it up, we're going to back away and Russia will have a green light to hit all of the decision-making centers, including your office. So I think that's the signal that's been sent to Zelensky. And I don't think this dirty bomb is going to happen. First of all, dirty bomb, it's a stupid weapon. It's not really a weapon. It's a psychological weapon.
It has some element of radioactive.
Yeah, the idea is to take radioactive waste or materials and, wrap them in high explosive and blow it up. You don't get a nuclear bomb. You don't get fusion or fission. What you get is just a bomb that scatters radioactive material. Most of it's consumed in the explosion. Most of it's sent up to the air and then comes down. Very little of it's scattered around. When the Iraqis did this in 1987, they tested 4 of these radiological bombs that they made. The last 2 were dropped by aircraft. They're 1,000-pound bombs, and they drop them and they boom, blow up, big cloud, all this stuff. But when they went in with the Geiger counters, they're like the lethal dose of radiation extended only about 10 meters from the crater. If you're 10 meters from a 1,000-pound bomb, when it goes off, radiation is the least of your problems. The bomb killed you already. So having a radiation weapon was stupid. And the Iraqis looked at it and said, oh, this is pretty dumb. We're not going to do it. And they stopped it and moved on. Israel tested radiological weapons, 20 different configurations between 2010 and 2014 in the Negev desert. And they did the same thing. They'd blow it up and then they'd come in and measure. And they came back and said, it doesn't work like people think it's going to work. There's very little contamination. It's not going to kill that many people. And it's for psychological purposes only. So unless Ukraine has come up with a new way of making a dirty bomb, and I don't think there's a new way. I think there's only one way, and that's to wrap stuff in high explosive. The weapon's not going to be very effective. And then, what's the purpose? The signature. Every nuclear reactor in the world, because this is the source of radioactive waste, is primarily from nuclear reactors, whether they're research and development, medical, or for the production of highly enriched uranium or by extraction plutonium. And it could be, you could build another one over here, and then they operate. The differences in operation will produce a unique signature to the radioactive isotopes, to the material. So even though it's zirconium 95, people will look at it and they'll be able to determine something about it that says, no, that came from this reactor, not this reactor. There's a database of this stuff from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And what I'm trying to get at is that if Ukraine thinks they can set off a dirty bomb and blame it on the Russians, within 24 hours, that will be seen through. People will investigate, find the radioactive elements and trace them back to a radioactive source and trace that source back to to its point of origin. And unless Ukraine has a source of radioactive material that isn't from Ukraine, it's going to say Ukraine did it. So this is just a bad idea all around. And I doubt very much that Ukraine is going to do it. To be honest, I think what happened is you have some brainstorming taking place in the Ukrainian presidential palace where they're desperate. What can we do? What can we do? How do we get the West to come in? And I think, like any brainstorm, try it sometime. Get your 10 friends around a table and come up with a crazy idea. How are we going to climb Mount Everest? And let everybody come up with an idea. How are we going to raise money to climb Mount Everest? And you're going to come up with 10 ideas. Some will be, you'll be like, okay, we could do that. Some are going to be like, that's crazy. That's insane. So now you have Zelensky saying, how are we going to get the West to intervene to save us? Because right now we're losing. We're going to lose. There's no way we win this thing. It's over. How do we get the West to come in? And you might have some guy that says, the West has to give us money or else we'll threaten a human wave of refugees. That's what somebody in the foreign ministry did, threaten the human wave of refugees. That's one thing. But there might be somebody who said, what if we did a false flag and we built a dirty bomb and we blamed it on the Russians? And somebody might ask the question, how would we build a dirty bomb? Oh, well, we have this factory and this factory and this factory, and I've made some phone calls, and these guys would be willing to do this. So now you made some phone calls, people are talking, intelligence services are listening, maybe they got a piece of the paper, and the Russians are looking at it going, holy cow. In the president's office, they're talking about producing a radioactive, a dirty bomb to use in a red flag scenario, and we can back it up because we've intercepted these phone calls where they're talking about it, so that corroborates this. We have to take this seriously. And they do have to take it seriously. But the reality is, I can't imagine even Zelensky in his craziest moment would never approve something like it because it's suicide. Zelensky knows that if he did that, he's a dead man. The Russians will kill him and kill everybody around that table, and they'll start hitting the decision-making centers that so far they haven't hit. So I personally believe that while the Russian intentions are good and that they felt they had to act on the intelligence, I think at the end of the day, when everything's said and done and we know everything about the intelligence, it'll be sort of what I just said. I don't believe Zelensky said, go, run with that. We're going to do that. I don't think that order was given because that's just insanity. Because that means that he has to believe that the Ukrainians are going to build a radioactive weapon that works, that if used won't point a finger back at him. And then he has to have a reason to believe that the West would intervene. The West isn't going to intervene. What part of NATO and the United States are not going to put troops on the ground in Ukraine? Does he not understand? So I think this is...
Is he trying to involve United States or other NATO countries to...
We would never get involved in that. We're not going to do a dirty bomb.
It's getting so dangerous.
If we do a dirty bomb, we just made it legal to do a dirty bomb against us. Our policy on this kind of stuff is absolute. It's a weapon of mass destruction. We've arrested and prosecuted people for even just talking about producing a dirty bomb. So the United States loses all sorts of credibility forever if we encouraged Ukraine to build a dirty bomb and if we collaborated with them. That's the end of our credibility. And I know there's people out there that think the United States is the personification of evil, the worst country in the world, etc. We're not that bad. We're not that bad. We still have a modicum of moral fiber, and there are red lines. And collaborating with a regime like the Zelensky regime to do a false flag dirty bomb is a red line I don't believe any American leader would cross. Do we have people in government who could conceive of it and come up with the idea? Yeah. But when it comes up to the final decision-making authority, there's even for someone like Joe Biden, who I don't have any use for, when you take that oath of office as the President of the United States, it's a huge responsibility, not only in terms of going forward, but protecting what has transpired. We have monuments in Washington, D.C. that mean something. We have the Jefferson Memorial. Go read the words on the Jefferson Memorial. We have the Lincoln Memorial. Read the words on the Lincoln Memorial. Go to the Washington Memorial and understand who that was, the father of our nation. Go to the National Archives and read the Declaration of Independence, read the Constitution, the original documents. We stand for something. We may not be perfectly implementing it here at home or abroad. We may have made a whole bunch of mistakes, but when you're the President of the United States, that history is your history. And you, for God's sake, aren't going to do anything that permanently mars us. I mean, yes, we'll invade Iraq in total violation of international law. But even though for millions of Iraqis that was the crime of the century, for the American people, it wasn't. But the United States getting involved in putting a dirty bomb in Ukraine
against Russia, that is a superpower, it would be.
Well, against anybody, it's not a matter of who you're using it against. It's what you're doing, the nefarious activities.
Exactly.
No, it's a horror. No, I just don't think. Maybe I'm naive. I could be naive, but I'm just telling you that I have faith, enough faith in the people that are in higher office, that while they can do many things that I disagree with, and they can do many things that are violation of international law, this is one red line they won't cross.
Because this guy Shoigu, he's not talking a lot. It's so silent. It should be something really serious that he was calling it.
I think it's very serious. I think the intelligence is very serious, and that's why he had to make the call. He had no choice but to make the call. Not to make the call would be a dereliction of duty.